Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rayhan. Today we're going to do rockets. Rockets? Yes, you hear it correctly. I want to paint this historic moment when Falcon 9 launches Crew Dragon on its first flight with NASA astronauts on board. Now let's begin. The very first part of this painting, which I didn't film, is to sketch the ground and also the area of the structures on rocket side, as well as the lighted and heated area beneath the rocket. And then I started to use the masking fluid for the very first time to cover the areas that I want to be lighter and add colors back to it later on. So I'm carefully outlining the huge cloud generated by the launch with the masking fluid so that the shape is perfect. What's interesting is that the cloud is actually not generated by the rocket itself. It's water underneath the launch pad evaporated during the launch so that it can absorb the heat from damaging the launch pad itself. Now that we've finished all the areas that need to be covered by the masking fluid, we need to wait and let it dry. Now the masking fluid has turned more yellow than before and I can feel it's definitely completely dried. So first I mix some blues and then I wet the paper with my big stroke brush. And then I realized I left an area on the left uncovered with the masking fluid, so I need to pay special attention to the details over there. And then I started to paint the sky. After studying my reference photo, I want to mix two types of blues. One is closer to the French ultramarine. The other one is closer to purplish blue. So I mix the French ultramarine with a little bit more Windsor violet. This launch is also special for me because I had the pleasure of visiting the Kennedy Space Center earlier this year before the coronavirus breakout. If you're going to visit the Kennedy Space Center one day in the future, one thing I definitely recommend is to take the bus tour where they're gonna show you the retired space shuttles as well as those launch complex, as well as the Vehicle Assembly Building, aka VAB. This picture of the VAB is from the NASA website and I want to show you guys what it looks like. VAB is the place where spacecrafts and rockets are finally assembled and prepared before they roll out to the launch pad. VAB is one of the largest buildings in the world by area and is also home to the largest American flag. I really want to show my excitement after watching the live stream of the launch, so currently it seems like doing this painting is a great way for me. As for the cloud, I originally wanted to use my Thirst clean brush to create the lines for the clouds, and then I realized it didn't work that well, it didn't seem that obvious, and I also got tired of cleaning up my brush every time with the paint. So I decided to go with my kitchen towels instead. Surprisingly, it works really well. And then as I checked the painting, I realized there are some areas that are left too light, so I decided to add back some pigment and try to blend it out. I add more details with my kitchen towels so that my clouds could look as close to my reference photo as possible. And then we let it dry. After the first layer is dry, I look at the painting and obviously it seems too light for me compared to my reference photo, and somehow the color seems a bit too gray blue instead of pure sky blue. So I add a bit more of the Windsor blue and wet the paper with a clean flat brush, of course. And there are times when some part of the paper dried before you're able to add the pigment. So you have to dry the paper again to avoid any harsh lines. I noticed on my reference photo that the right part of the sky is darker than the left part, and your painting will always look darker when it's wet. So I decided to add a good amount of Windsor blue to the right section of my painting. Not sure how it will turn out. I decided to add another layer of blue to the right and try to even out the transition. Unfortunately, my paper is too dry at this point to allow me to spread the pigment evenly. So I decided to put it aside and work on the clouds first. To be honest, shaping the cloud is very enjoyable to watch and to practice. There's a lot of flexibility and you can just gently tap anywhere you like and a cloud is born. So if you're interested in trying out watercolor paintings, the tissue method for cloud painting might be a good start. I got tired of waiting my watercolor paper to dry out, so I decided to use some magic. Now that my paper is dry, I can definitely tell that I don't like the hard transition between the dark blue and the light blue. Then the decision is simple: add another layer of blue. The process you must be very familiar now. Wet the paper and add the pigment. I will let you enjoy the process now. At this point, I'm very satisfied with the situation. This blue looks so beautiful. I'm gonna hurry up and create the clouds before the paper dries. When I'm referencing back to my photo, I wondered if I had to do the clouds on the first and the second layer. I can vaguely tell that there were clouds underneath, but not very clearly. If you did not watch along with me, and you might not even be able to tell that there were clouds. Maybe I should just add enough pigment of blue on the first layer and just wait it to be dry and create the clouds afterwards. Now I'm pretty satisfied with my clouds and can't wait for my paper to dry. Now it's dried. We have gone through the biggest area of this painting. Now we need to focus on the details of rocket clouds, the structure and water tower around, and also the ground. The ground is interesting because there are several roads leads to the launch pad. Each road looks more like an airport runway than a regular road. I assume this is because these roads have the capacity for the crawler transporter to move on it. The latest version of the crawler is called Crawler Transporter 2, or the CT-2. CT-2 can slowly but safely deliver spacecrafts and rockets from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pad. Here are some fun facts about the crawler according to the NASA website. The crawler is the size of a baseball infield. The crawler's top speed is 1 mile per hour loaded and 2 miles per hour unloaded. Let's come back to the painting. I mixed some yellow and brown to create the shade of the rocket cloud before lift off my masking fluid, and some indigo and gray for the darker area on the ground. I used the same dark color with a smaller brush for the structure on the left. On my reference photo, there are some tiny windows and openings on the structure. I forget to add those little white dots and lines when layering the masking fluid, so I'm trying very hard to create these details with my brush. Now I think I'm done with all the colors before removing the masking fluid. So I carefully remove the masking fluid with hand. It feels like soft rubber and I did not have any trouble removing it at all. The only part made me a bit unhappy is that the masking fluid has taken away a small amount of the paper surface where I poured a bit more masking fluid. So, lesson learned. Perhaps next time I'll stick to my toothpick and not pour the masking fluid on the paper. I used a little bit of light brown and gray to create the color of the road. I didn't leave a lot of water on my brush, so the new painted area dried pretty quickly. I realized it's lighter than I wanted, so I decided to add another layer on top of it. What might be a little frustrated to me is that the color on the left and right don't seem to be the same. It always has a shade difference. When I started to paint the left section, I did not mix enough pigment, so I had to mix the color again for the right section. Perhaps a good way out of it is to mix enough color before I jump in, or use a small piece of paper to swap the color first. I also used the dark color on the building to copy the mudded area on the reference photo. I used a little bit of gray and yellow and mixed it with a lot of water to create different shades of the shadow in the cloud. The last bit of the painting is to add the details on the spacecraft, water tower, and the utility tower. One thing I realize now that I can do better is to use a different color for the heated air behind the spacecraft. I used a very light yellow, but I don't think it shows off the heat from the way it looks. I'll probably add a bit orange on the edge of the hot air to make it look hotter. Now I'm just adding some final details before I complete the painting. There are definitely some ups and downs in the whole process, but I think it's definitely a great way to learn. And most importantly, I get to celebrate the launch of the Crew Dragon in my own way. So here it is, I'm done. I'm so happy to share my painting process with you and hope you've enjoyed it as much as I do. You can also find me on Instagram by Raihan_Raihan. Remember to subscribe if you want to get notified on my latest video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.